Listening Fanfiction presents Draco Malfoy and the Letter from the Future. From Draco will hear about this. Based on the book series Harry Potter by J.K. Rowling. Narrated for you by Seraphis. Chapter 1. Ostende Mihi. Draco was standing in front of the blue fire, his fingers grabbing onto the rolled-up parchment in his hand so tightly they were about to cramp up. He was trembling from head to toe, and cold sweat was running down his neck. This was insane! The most deranged thing he had ever done. He must be completely mental, and yet he knew with total clarity that he was going to do it anyway. It was exactly 24 minutes past 2 a.m. In 6 hours and 36 minutes, he and his parents would be tried in front of the Wizengamot. The ancient clock hanging over the aged chimney in this old, almost forgotten part of their west wing seemed to be taunting him, counting down the seconds of his freedom. Maybe of his life if things went badly. Because who said he was going to come out of this alive? The mark on his arm proved his guilt, not to mention all the things he had done. He had almost killed both Katie Bell and Ron Weasley in his 6th year. He had led the Death Eaters into Hogwarts not much later, and it had resulted in Dumbledore's death. He had tortured and hurt more people than he could count. He still felt sick every time he thought about all the things he had done and the blood on his hands. He knew that the hateful things the Aurors had whispered at him when they had questioned him were right. He might have been kissed by the end of the day, and he would deserve it. But he was scared. He did not want to die, not now, after he had made it out of this war alive. He and his parents were finally safe, only to have a wand held against their throats all over again. All he wanted was a way out, a way to do it all over again, and to erase his mistakes. He stared at the crackling blue flames so hard they imprinted in his vision. His father had told him about this chimney when he had still been very young, long before he had even set foot into Hogwarts. He had explained that this fireplace was much more than just a regular entrance point to a flue network, that it had been part of this manor from the days of its construction, and that it held some very ancient magic.
You know about time tenors, of course, but this magic was of a different, stronger variety. It was supposed to actually be able to reverse time, to send you back into the past, not just as a bystander, but into your actual body. You could relive those days all over again, or change the past.
So, Draco had asked with big eyes, if I make a mistake, I could just hop in and make it right again?
No,
his father had said immediately, shaking his head with a sudden solemnity to his expression.
It was broken some centuries ago, and no one ever managed to fix it. Even trying would be the utmost stupidity. There was no way of finding out whether it's safe or not to use it, because when you return to the past, you will have forgotten your future. Even if you succeed, you will not remember trying to have fixed it.
But, Draco had frowned, what if you wrote a message to your past self explaining? What if you—
Draco,
his father had interrupted him with a tone of absolute authority.
Meddling with time is dangerous. If it goes wrong, you will forever be lost in the limbo of it. It is not worth the risk. Do you understand?
Draco had nodded, as he had always done when his father had told him what to do. Ever the good boy, never going against his wishes. And look where that had brought him. Draco gulped, squeezing his fingers around the parchment in his hand. Things were different now, though. This might be the last chance he had at making a difference for himself and for his whole family. If he was likely to have been kissed by this time tomorrow, wasn't the risk of being stuck in an eternal limbo of time worth taking? Plus, he thought, his chances weren't bad. He had managed to fix the vanishing cabinet after all, and he had spent much more time on this project. All these hours when he had tried escaping from the madness going on in his own home, when he had needed something to do or else he would have gone loony, he had spent here fiddling with this fireplace. He had read up on the spell work in long-forgotten tomes from hidden corners of their library, and everything looked as it should have. The flames were the exact right shade of blue, for one. Deep azure, not quite cobalt or royal. They weren't hot to the touch, but they still emanated warmth. It was just like it had been described, and a long way from the scorching turquoise fire he had started with.
"It's as good as it's going to get," he muttered to himself, wincing at how shaky his own voice was. This was his one chance to make things right, his one shot at being a good guy and choosing the winning side instead of the one his father had pushed onto him.
"Here goes," he said. He took a deep, steadying breath before stepping into the flames. They tickled him through his clothes with their strange magical heat, and it felt bizarre.
"July 31st, 1991,
he exclaimed in a clear voice with only a slight tremble to his words. First nothing happened, and Draco thought he had failed. Then the blue flames rose around him, and just like they were supposed to, they turned white, blinding him and blocking everything else from his view. Draco stumbled out of the chimney, coughing as he collided with the floor in a decidedly non-smooth manner. He blinked, looking around in confusion. What was he doing in the West Wing? Had he not been in bed, unable to fall asleep thinking of the upcoming day just a moment ago? Draco watched numbly as the blue flames died down from the chimney, leaving the room in the soft light of the torches on the wall. The ancient clock above the fireplace gonged once, informing him that it was 2:30 in the middle of the night. "What in Salazar's name?" Draco muttered, before he took a note of the parchment in his hand. He stared down at the way it lay in his hand, rolled up and sealed with the Malfoy emblem. He took another suspicious look around, making sure he was alone, before sitting up and looking at the parchment once more. He broke the seal carefully, unrolling it to reveal a letter written in green ink and a tidy script that seemed strangely familiar. Draco, this will be hard to believe, but I am writing to you from the future. I fixed the fireplace, or better, you will 7 years ahead, and if I succeeded, this message will reach you in the year 1991 at age 11, shortly before you start at Hogwarts. I returned us to this point in time to ask you to change our future and to save both our parents and us. In the past years, this family has made a lot of wrong choices, and I want you to unmake them for us. Befriend Harry Potter. You will meet him today at Madame Malkin's, and I want you to make sure you end up on his good side. Don't insult his friends, even if you feel the need to. Be polite and in no way condescending. He doesn't know much about our world, and if you play our cards right, you can be the one to show him the way around. If you blow it like I did, he will hate you, and the consequences of that will go much farther than you can understand now. Be his friend. You will need him someday. Furthermore, and this is just as important as becoming Harry Potter's friend, don't believe everything Father tells you, and don't make any decisions simply because you wish to please him. The ideals he is pursuing will be the ruin of this family, not only because they are wrong and bigoted, but because it will put you on the wrong side of a crucial conflict. Purebloods are no better than half-bloods or even muggleborns. Such a thing as blood traitors do not exist. Do not stick to these false prejudices. The dark side will not be the one who wins. Strive towards the light. Go to Hogwarts, make the right friends, and stick to them. I know you won't want to believe this letter. How would you, if it questions what Father taught you? But I can show you what your future will look like if you don't listen to me. Hold on to this letter and say, ostende mihi. If you don't want what you will see to happen, be nice to Harry Potter when you meet him today. Yours, Draco Malfoy, August 15th, 1998. Draco gaped at the signature and the date next to it, incredulous. Merlin's pants! He whispered. This was a trick, right? Somewhere in the corridor, Theodore Knott was listening in on him and laughing, he was sure of it. But at the same time, he was intrigued, and his eyes returned to the Latin just a few paragraphs above. Ostende mihi, he said, and gasped when the writing washed from the letter at his words. Everything started spinning, and then he found himself in the middle of a train compartment. The edges around him were blurry and washed out, but he had no time to focus on his surroundings because at that moment he heard himself speak and whirled around to watch. You'll soon find out some visiting families are much better than others, Potter, he heard himself say to a bespectacled boy with messy black hair. You don't want to go making friends with the wrong sort. I can help you there. He held out his hand for the boy to shake, but the other didn't take it. Instead, he looked faintly angry.
I think I can tell who the wrong sort are for myself, thanks,
Was all the answer he got, and Draco saw himself flushed both in shock and rage. The scenery changed then. Everything started spinning once more, and he found himself standing in a large bathroom. By the sinks, a boy had sunk into the floor, sobbing. The boy had blonde hair like his, but he was much older, and he was wearing Slytherin robes. A ghost of a girl was floating over him, making cooing noises.
I can't do it,
the boy sobbed.
I'm going to fail, and then he will kill my parents. Kill me.
The ghost was saying something, but Draco could not make it out. The room was spinning again, and next he found himself in a room so spacey that it seemed to have no walls, and which was packed with odd things as far as the eye reached. He found the same boy again, screaming and running from flames that were quickly spreading through the room. Draco had just enough time to recognize the boy. It was him, Draco, years and years in the future, the same Draco that had written him the letter. His own screams still hung in his ears when the scenery changed again, and he found himself in the fresh air, looking up at a burning castle. With a start, he recognized it as Hogwarts. When he found himself back in the west wing of the manor, he was shaking like a leaf. He dropped the letter and crawled away from it until his back at the door.
No,
Draco whispered, not sure if he wanted to scream or cry.
No!
The words of advice written in the letter kept ringing through his head, now in the voice of the older Draco. If you don't want this to happen, be nice to Harry Potter when you meet him today.